Gay Republicans, Tories. Explain the mindset.
Warped.
Through and through.
You don't agree, do you?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of an answer. And I was just thinking, looking back to when I was a teenager, I was quite conservative, which I'm horrified to admit to, and I regret enormously that I was. So maybe it's just horses for courses, you know.
Why do you regret that? Why are you horrified?
Because it's completely against my values now.
Which is what?
Which is to the left of centre, I suppose, and certainly not conservative either to a small c or a large c.
No, I mean, what are your values? What I'm just trying to draw out of you, so we can get an idea of what we're perceiving as a left-wing necessarily value, as opposed to the Republican Tory.
I think a libertarian approach, the importance of the liberties of the individual, the rights of the individual, and... well,
that's what the Tories and Republicans sort of say.
I think they've warped it, really, by adopting that phrase, yes, because as conservatives, what they are fundamentally interested in is self-interest, and preserving their own self-interest and preserving their property and their rights as opposed to other people. And that's the most important thing, and they don't want to relinquish any of them.
Well, aren't we...
The Tories have always been self-serving. Ever since I was a kid, you know, it was the rich looking after the rich and the poor get poorer. Mm. And that's still the case today.
Yes. But there were a lot, you know, there were a lot of gay Tories, ministers. Yeah, and a lot of gay men and gay women who support the Tories or the Republicans. And we know the Republicans are, you know, psychotically homophobic.
Most Tories, though, tend to be upper class or middle class on a good income, whereas most Labour or what's the other one, Lib Dem, they tend to be more working class.
But there were some, like in the 80s, there were some gay men who weren't of that class who supported Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be about money, surely.
Yes. Do you think it's all about money?
If it's about protecting the wealth you've got, your assets, means voting Conservative, people would...
Or
some people would make that choice.
Yes. Mm.
But that may not necessarily go along with being homophobic. I think the implicit in your question, really, was that if you are Conservative or right-wing or Republican, you must by definition be homophobic or at least against gay rights. And I think historically that's not the case. I mean, you look, it was a Conservative government which decriminalised homosexuality in the 60s. And I'd hate to have been a gay man in communist Russia in the 50s. So I think it's not quite as clear-cut as your question implies. Mm.
They did then bring in Clause 28 though. I mean, they did bring in that. You said they decriminalised Conservative, but they did bring in Clause 28.
I know.
And I did know who still supported the Tories during that period, and I just could not get my head around that at all. I mean, how can you still...
What did you say to them?
Why were you doing it? Because I think
what was their response?
But in that they said that there were more political issues to consider than that one issue. I thought that issue was so important that I didn't think you could just ignore that for the other political issues. But some, you know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about politics to say I support this party because this, and this is their manifesto and I support all of these issues. That, to me, just stood out as being something.
I'm interested in their response. How did they justify? How did they justify it?
By saying that. It was a long time ago, these conversations.
No, I know, it's 20, 30 years ago. But
it was all based on family values, wasn't it? That was the whole thing about it.
It was, yes.
Homosexuality was bad. It couldn't be taught in school because it was amoral. And it was all about family values, mum, dad and 2 kids. Never mind the fact that there's
patriarchy again.
Yeah, I mean, never mind the fact there's 2 or 3 kids in that class that could be gay and they've got no one to talk to and no outlet. Yeah. They weren't allowed to discuss it.
I think the problem is that, I mean, I think Rob sort of hit on that, is that it's not, we can't be totally consistent. So, I mean, if you had, for example, a choice of voting for a party which was pro-gay, but also wanted to bring in capital punishment, how do you mix those two, for example? And I think at the end of the day, you have to look at the totality of the package, and you may say, well, actually, the fact I'm gay and gay rights is not that important to me, but maybe supporting Israel is important, or vice versa. And I think that's what happens in the real world, really. And I think that is perhaps a reason why you can be
at that point.
Why it's not totally illogical to be a conservative and to be gay.
In the same way that why would you have voted Labour in the last election? I mean, this was a party who took us to Iraq. This is a party who's been responsible for sort of taking away, I think, a lot of our sort of privacy rights as individuals within the society. And I think they, what they've done to the country is horrendous. Yes. So I was, who would I want to vote for, really? Yes. And I think also, sort of the left and the right have sort of converged into one. So I think people don't these days. What's the difference between the two anyway? Really, I mean, it's quite bland, isn't it? Politics, because there is no real You know, I remember watching The Iron Lady and thinking, okay, I didn't really like her, but at least there were some personalities in politics then. At least there was a distinction between the two kind of political ideals. You could choose one or the other. Now it's just like, well, who do you choose?
Yes.
They're all the same. So I think...
But and it's a bit more
I
like
think
that in
there's-
America, isn't it? They certainly have a huge distinction between sort of left and right, really.
Yeah.
Do you remember, I don't think it was the last election, it was the one before, when the BNP suddenly got seats.
Yeah.
And it was all because everybody was so pissed off with both the Labour and the Conservatives that there was no other choice, and they were voting for BNP just to say, look, we're pissed off with this, do something about it.
And that's happening right across
Yes.
Europe now.
Yes.
It is, yes.
Yes.
Scary.
The neo-Nazis
Worrying.
are all flaring
Yeah.
up again, yes.
Mm.
They got it in, is it Sweden or Norway or something at the moment? They got a big outbreak of it, or no,
Yes.
Holland. Holland, they got a big problem with it at the moment.
Outbreak of.
Neo-Nazis.
Yes.
Neo-Nazism coming through because people are so fed up with both the left and the right. It's like, well, which way do we go?
Yeah.